In this class we're going to talk about operations management, and as the title suggests here, the nature of operations in business. Now this is one class amongst several on this specific topic, and you should track down the other videos, look at them, make your own notes and pad out your notes from your own reading. So it's important to have a good understanding of the importance of operations management and the importance of operations within business. So to start, let's talk about the diversity and importance of operations. Well, for a start, it's operations that creates value. Operations takes, let's say, a raw material or a set of raw materials and converts them through a production process into valuable output. So it's the operations that's creating value. The same could apply to a service business. The orders are taken in, the operations management within the service sector will organize the various tasks to be completed and finally deliver the service at the end, again creating value. Improvements in operations can simultaneously lower costs and improve customer satisfaction. So there's a constant pressure on operations management to look out for efficiencies, and through the efficiencies costs are reduced, but also better customer satisfaction, a better quality product is produced. So customers are happier with the product and are therefore more likely to come back and replace and place repeated orders. But also costs may be lowered. So the business benefits in two ways. Sometimes improving operations depends on improvements in technology. The big example here would be the introduction of computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing, which enables processes to be operated and also better quality, because tolerances and precise measurements can be entered into the machines, and through the use of sensors the product is produced to a very high quality at the end. So technology has made a remarkable inroad into the production process. The same in the service sector. Communications facilities, specialist software and so on have made a big impact on the way the service sector operates. The importance of operations management and efficient operations management is that it can generate a competitive advantage. It can secure the business. It can develop the reputation of the business as one that offers a high quality product at a good price, and it's reliable, it's professional. So it can gain competitive advantage. Good operations management leads to, or could lead to, good competitive advantage. And also operations management is a diverse set of operations. It depends on how we define operations management. It could be that it includes procurement, the purchasing department. It could even encroach on marketing and have some responsibility for marketing and for the flow of information between production and marketing. But certainly it would look at production, the stores management, distribution and logistics, perhaps purchasing. It involves the more practical doing part of the business. The other sections, the HRM and the marketing perhaps, and the administration, these are to deal with important services that feed in to operations management. and must be taken into account by operations management. But operations management itself is that set of functions that produces the product or produces the service. So we have an environment in which operations management operates. We have sets of competitors and customers. We have suppliers. These are the people side. Then we have regulations, government regulations, local government regulations about how the business should be conducted. Pollution, noise, all that sort of sets of regulations. We have pressure groups who watch over the business to make sure that the business is behaving properly. We have trade unions. We have even consumer groups, depending on the nature of the business, who may be putting pressure on the business to behave in certain ways. We have the technology, which is constantly on the move, as I said earlier. It seems to be constantly improving and constantly leading to challenges for the business to keep up to date and to integrate the latest thinking and the latest procedures into its technology and into its production base. And on the very macro level, we have the economy, how the economy is functioning, the rate of inflation, the value of the currency internationally, the rate of growth of the economy, taxation within the economy, and all of these macro variables impact on the business as well and must be taken into account. And we've also got the international community. Globalization is now a major factor which must be incorporated into companies' thinking. Their competitors may no longer be just down the road. Their competitors now may be on the other side of the world. So globalization is something which is very important to be factored in to any consideration, as is the state of the labour market. The skills that people have when they come to the workplace for the first time, their ability to learn and to train, their motivation, their requirements, health and safety, salaries, wages. All of these things must be taken into account. So the environment within which a business operates is highly complex, as this particular set of points illustrates. We also have the inputs that the business need to function. The inputs are being capital, the amount of resources that the business can draw on in order for it to succeed. That may be the premises, the fixtures and fittings, the machinery, the stores, the stock, the computer systems, the amount of cash in the bank, the working capital. There needs to be an amount of capital before the business can properly function, employ staff and produce the product, because generally speaking production comes before payment. So it's important that the business can survive having completed the product, dispatched the product to the customer, then it must wait for the customer to pay. Labour is an input, and labour must be cultivated and monitored and trained and looked after, and there is a duty of care on the part of the employer to ensure that the working conditions are appropriate and conducive to health and safety. And so there are obligations on the part of the organisation to deal with labour properly. Entrepreneurship can't be measured. Entrepreneurship is in the mind of the individual, the person who has an idea, its imagination, its alertness to opportunities. And that's a good definition of entrepreneurship. That particular definition comes to us from a famous writer in the area called Israel Kirzner. But entrepreneurship is an alertness to opportunities. It's being able to look at what there is, the company, the processes, the products, the people, and imagine what can be done, what new markets can be tapped into, what new products, related products, given the technology, given the capacity of the business, what new products could be developed and delivered. Look at the time scale for all of it as well. Look at the production time scale. How long does it take to make the product? Start to finish. And see if there are economies in the way the business is designed, the way it's constructed, laid out, and see if there are efficiencies in terms of time, in the way time is managed within the business. And finally, research and development. Absolutely essential that the business should continually try to improve its product and to innovate what it does. And this is linked to entrepreneurship. So it's having imagination, it's having good research skills, and being able to try to innovate the product, innovate the way production takes place, innovate even the design of the business, innovate, because that is the nature of the world in which we live. Then we have the transformation system. This is production, warehousing and distribution. It transforms, it takes raw materials and converts the raw materials into the products that are sold at the end. And all of the inputs come together to transform raw materials into something which is sold. If it's a service, all of the inputs come together to produce the service. So again, everything is required. If it's a law company, then they are commissioned by clients to represent them in court. But the law company will have secretaries and consultants and backup and research and libraries, and all of this has to be paid for. All of them are brought to bear on the production and delivery of that service. So we can see it as a transformation system, moving from one state into another, moving from raw materials, moving from a collection of raw materials into, if you like, a collection of finished products that can be sold on. And the outputs, these are the products, but really the output is customer satisfaction. That's really the product. That's what's been sold, is customer satisfaction. If the customer is happy, then the job has been well done. It's not just delivering lorry load of products. If the lorry load of products, the physical delivery, does not satisfy the customer, then really the whole exercise has been a failure. So the real name of the game, I suppose, is customer satisfaction. That's what the customers need. They need satisfaction, and that's how we measure the effectiveness of the business. And all of this, right throughout, needs monitoring to ensure that it's good quality and to make sure that the processes are being followed as set out. And the processes themselves should be subject to scrutiny for efficiency and for health, safety, all of the issues that we would expect in terms of good management. And quality is essential in all of this. To ensure that customer satisfaction is met, the products must be good quality. Now let's talk about outputs. Two types of output commonly result from a production system. A production system can produce services. These are non-physical. We can't touch the service. They're not tactile. And we have products, which are physical goods. So generally we have two types, services and products. Now the characteristics of products and services. Well, first of all, the products are tangible. We can touch the product. We can pick it up. We can look at it. Services are intangible. We can't pick up or touch the service. It's a service. There is minimal contact with the customer in products. Customers buy the product is put in front of the customers and they buy it. The marketing department will deal with the customers, but generally speaking, customers do not have a lot of contact with the business. With services, there is extensive contact with the customer. The customer is involved almost from the start, right from the start. The customer commissions the service and consumes the service, and it all happens in one go. There is minimal participation by the customer in the delivery. The customer simply takes the product when it has been delivered. They purchase the product or they don't purchase the product. But there's minimal participation. Generally speaking, they don't go to the factory and help out, or they don't get involved in the delivery process. They buy the product when it has been delivered and made available for them, if they so choose to buy it. There's extensive participation, on the other hand, with services. Extensive participation by the customer in the delivery. If we go to a restaurant, then we watch the delivery. The delivery comes to the table. We are there. The product has been produced almost at the same time. Not quite at the same time as consumption, but the services of the restaurant, paradoxically, the services of the restaurant are consumed at the time that the meal is delivered, and that is almost the same time as production. So with services, production and consumption are joined up. And that's the point we're making here. With products, there's delayed consumption. We make the products in factories. When they've been made, they are dispatched. Then they go to warehouses perhaps, or they go to retailers, or they go someplace for further distribution. There's a delay. They've been made, and now there's a delay in the time that's taken by between delivery and purchase by the final customer. With services, the meal, as just said, it's almost immediate. Production and consumption is almost simultaneous, not quite. Production does have to take place before consumption, but it's almost there. If we commission a particular item of clothing to be made for us, the production takes place in advance, but it's almost the same as when we get it. It's almost the same time period. We almost consume it and production's almost at the same time. There's not a big delay. We don't generally commission a piece of clothing from a tailor and then go back a couple of years later and pick it up, or go back a week later and pick it up. We sometimes we go and try and get a garment produced or altered and go back later, a couple of days or whatever, go back and pick it up. So it's almost that consumption and production is simultaneous for services. Almost the case. With products, generally speaking, they're capital intensive. Generally speaking, there are machines involved. People use tools. We've used tools right throughout history. We very seldom make things just with our hands without any implements. And as time has gone by, the implements that we use have become more sophisticated. Now we use complicated machinery, sometimes computer-controlled machinery. So it's quite capital intensive. With services, it's labor intensive. Go back to the meal. The meal was produced by a chef or by a cook, by a person. labor intensive. If we go to have a garment altered at by a tailor in a clothing shop, it's labor intensive. That person will alter the garment. It's a service. So one is capital intensive and the other is labor intensive. And with products, it may be possible to measure quality. We have a standard. The standard is the benchmark. It's the specifications of the product. The product must meet certain specifications. And we can compare the actual production with the specifications. So quality is measured. If the production, the items that are produced in the production process, if those correspond to the specifications, we could say it's good quality. But with food in the restaurant, it may be very nice food, but the next day the cook may be not having such a great day and the food doesn't taste quite as nice as before. So the quality is difficult to measure. It's difficult to get the same standard all the time. In the restaurant, the food may vary slightly from one meal to the next. The quality may vary. If we go to a law firm for legal help, the quality of the advice may vary slightly. It may vary from one day to the next very slightly. Our experiences may vary. So quality is difficult to measure in the context of services, but it may be possible to measure it in the context of products. Facilitating good concept. Well, often confusion in trying to classify an organization as manufacturing or a service. This really takes us into very vague areas, but it may be the case that we could consider all businesses as providing a service, because ultimately it is customer satisfaction that has to be met. And customer satisfaction is measured subjectively. Are the customers happy with the product? Even though the product is a physical one, they have to look at it and they're happy with it or they're not happy with it. So there's often confusion as to whether an organization is manufacturing or service. Now, the facilitating good concept avoids this ambiguity. All organizations are defined as a service. That's it. All organizations provide a service. They don't provide goods. They provide items which give satisfaction. The tangible part of the service is defined as facilitating good. It's facilitating the experiences of the customer who enjoys having that physical good. But the enjoyment is in the mind of the customer. So there are pure services. Like I said, go to the restaurant or go to the tailor, go to the law firm. These are pure services. But we can imagine production companies as providing a service. It's a strange concept, but the fact is they make a product and the product gives pleasure to the person buying it, gives happiness, gives contentment, gives satisfaction to the person buying it. And that is subjective. That's somewhere inside the person. They feel good about the product. And that's not totally dissimilar to going to the restaurant and having a nice meal, or having a nice piece of clothing made, or getting good advice from a legal person. So we have physical and information outputs as well. When we're dealing with information, the physical output, the seller no longer owns when it's sold. If it's a physical thing, if we're making a product, a physical product, we sell it. We no longer own it. It's no longer ours. Someone else owns it. With information, the seller continues to hold the information after the sale. So the information is sold, but the seller still has the information. Replication requires manufacture with physical outputs. When we make a physical output, and we make several of them, we have to replicate it. We have to go back to manufacture and make several of them, get more raw materials and set up the machines and make more of them. With information, the replication's at negligible cost and without limit. If I have a computer file, if I have a word processed document, I can just take copies of it. It's negligible cost, and I could do it without limit. The only limit is the amount of space I've got on my hard drive. But I could take many, many copies. With output, they exist in a single location. The output, once it's sold, it's a physical thing. It exists in a particular location. It can't be in two places at the same time. It's a physical thing. It exists in a particular space. But with information, it can exist in many locations simultaneously. If I take copies of a Word document or of a word process document, I can send you a copy, I can send somebody else a copy. That same document can exist in many places. With physical output, production is subject to what we call diminishing returns. As we make more and more of them, it becomes progressively more expensive to make. It means that bottlenecks in production can develop, the system's running at full capacity, machines can break down, people are under stress trying to produce more. Eventually the costs will start to rise. With information output, oddly enough, it's subject to increasing returns. Once the document is prepared, if it is a process document, let's say, or a contract, I can copy it 4 or 5 times, then I can copy the group. So I'm copying 5 times at a time. Eventually I can copy 100 times the amount each time. I just group it and copy the 100. So with physical production, diminishing returns can set in. With information, it's cheap to do. And physical output wears out. Eventually, it's no good. It's subject to rust or decay or malfunction, or it just starts to fall apart eventually. It's a physical output. If it's not maintained, it wears out. It's got a lifespan. But let's say computer files, information files, they don't wear out. Once the format is there, presumably a machine will always be found into the future that can open that particular format and access that information. So it doesn't wear out. Operations activities. Well, there is a strategy. A strategy is needed to guide operations activities. The operations management must know what they're trying to achieve. They must have some idea, some plan. They must be working to some target. They need to plan the output. It's impossible to deal with an organization unless the output is planned. They need to sequence the output. They need to have a plan for how they're going to use the machines, the facilities, the stores. If they're producing a service, they still need an output plan. When will different people be involved in the project and make their contribution? When will the final project be completed? Do they have the right number of machines and the right capacity to produce the output? Are there enough resources? Are there enough people to produce the output. The location, where should it be produced? If it's a very heavy output, a very big mass of output, difficult to move, then it's probably best to locate it somewhere near the point where it's going to be ultimately used, where the customers are. If it's some light piece of production, then it may be transported easily. There's also, of course, the location internally within the business, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's also important that the location of different parts of the production process are well laid out. And that takes us to the next point, the facility layout itself. It's important that the stores and production can link to each other and they're efficiently located so they're easily able to move raw materials from one part into the production process. The production process is sequential, so all the machines that are needed are all available. They're all planned using Gantt charts to know exactly where the production is. They're able to move from one machine to the next smoothly, right up to the final machine, and after that into the dispatch to be delivered. So the facility should be well laid out. The same would happen to services. If it's a service product, the service should be added to, monitored, progress checked, quality checked right throughout, the input of specialists called in, and eventually delivered. And it should be aggregate planning. It should plan in total. It's pointless just planning for one machine. One machine is just part of the total system. Plan for the whole system. Plan for all the route the way through the business. Take the order number and progress that order number all the way through the company to the final stage of dispatch. Make sure that the inventory is well managed according to some agreed policy. It could be that the philosophy is to minimize stock holding, because stock holding is dead cash. It's not doing anything for the business. It's just products sitting idly in bins or raw materials that are not being used. So it's imperative that stocks should be kept low. But that depends on delivery and reliability in delivery. So that needs to be looked at. The material requirements planning, it's important that with jobs coming in, with orders received, that the operations management are consulted about what materials are required and procurement is contacted so that stocks can be replenished and updated according to the orders, and also looking at stocks maintained in the stores, and some philosophy about stock holding is put in place. Not necessarily a just in time, because it depends on the reliability of the people making the deliveries. But production should be scheduled. There should be Gantt charts, and there should be organizational information about where particular jobs have got to in the system, which machine are they on, who's processing it, and also quality at each level should be looked at. And that really is the next point. But not just scheduling the jobs, but scheduling the quality as well, making sure that the quality is checked at each level. It's pointless if the quality is bad at the first process, and there are many processes, let's say, in the system. If the quality is bad at the first process, then what's the point in continuing with that particular product? That one should be taken out and replaced until good quality goes through the system. But don't expect bad quality workmanship or bad quality machining or whatever it is in the first process to somehow be compensated in the second and subsequent processes. So it should be good quality running all the way through. Now, the functional view of organizations. Well, three core functions. First of all, operations, marketing, and finance and accounting. Now, you could say there are many others. HRM, for example. It's important that people be taken into account because people are central to the delivery of the products. It's people who make the product or who supply the service. But depending on which textbooks you look at, different ones list different core functions. But operations is certainly absolutely vital. Marketing. If the marketing people are not doing their job, if there are no orders coming in, then there's no point in the business. And it's not just a question of getting the orders, but they must collect the cash from the orders, and bills must be paid, and the operation should show some return to the owners. So other important functions, other than the core ones, as I said, is the human resource management and information systems. It could be that engineering, depending on the nature of the business we're considering, engineering may be important. So we have different functions that we can identify within the business, and it's a question of structuring the business to fulfill these functions. Clearly, operations management is vitally important. Operations management may incorporate information systems. It could incorporate engineering. It can incorporate the stores and inventory control and dispatch and logistics. And so that is one enormous area. That's essential. That is one of the key core functional areas. Now, there are alternative ways for organizing work activities. So we could have the functional approach. Companies organize activities on the basis of the type of work they perform. That's one way to do it, to look at the activities and design the business structure around the functional approach, around what the business does. So if the business makes a certain product, it could be designed around that particular product, and the whole design of the business could be targeted in that way. It may be a problem, however, because it could be the case that a company produces several products, and although there should be some commonality between them and the technology they use, there may be still some variations, and some of the products may be more dominant and more demanding in terms of resources and layout, and occupy its own space within the business. It may be more demanding than the other products. So a functional approach is certainly useful for some businesses. It could be that they're also designed around the specific value creating processes. Which part of the business creates most value, and giving more emphasis to that part. A lot of this area in terms of organizing the work activity is really to do with information and the information that the business possesses about the contribution of different products to its balance sheet, or indeed to the measurement of the complexity of the products in terms of production. It really depends on the management and on their particular view of the activities of the business and how it should be organized. That completes this talk on operations. As I said at the outset, it's one talk amongst several on this topic, and it's important that you look at the others and make your own notes, do some reading, and pad out your notes and have a good understanding of the nature and importance of operations in business life. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so thank you for watching.